I have a job for you.
Jeez, it's not another arc, is it?
No, not again. This time I need a full-scale home renovation.
Noah Construction and Builders is your design and build partner. We do it all, from additions and dormers to full-scale renovations. Schedule your no-cost design consultation today. Visit us online at noahconstruction-builders.com.
Noah Construction and Builders. Through dreams we design, with vision we build.
95.9 FM, 1240 AM, WGBB Radio, Long Island's oldest radio station, MuscleSport Media Live, Monday night, 7:30 8 p.m. I am your co-host, Joe Pietaro. Of course, I want to thank Noah Construction-Builders.com for being our title sponsor. And also, I want to do this quick read here for Adams Home Improvement, Repairs and Maintenance. HML Corp. Guys, I'm not only talking about Adam. He's my guy. I use him for my own stuff. He's if you anything from handyman to a big job and anything in between, licensed and insured in Suffolk and Nassau counties for 28 years. Handyman tasks, interior and exterior painting, moldings, heat covers, carpentry, electrical placement, windows, floor installation. That he will be doing next in my house, because that is something that we just had done. I'm going to have deck building done, power washing. The list goes on and on. Copy this number down, folks, 631-321-4309, or go to DLR-MACAN at optonline.net, 631-321-4309. Adams Home Improvement. My co-host, Anthony Tuminello, has another scheduling conflict, and of course, I'm never alone because Trevor is always here, but I have a very special phoner guest tonight. So I won't be just talking to myself for once and without Anthony here. So I'm very happy to invite and welcome at Not Gaetti from X, Twitter, whatever you want to call it, and also Instagram, to WGBB Radio. At Not Gaetti, what's going on, my friend?
Hey Joe, how are you, my friend? Happy to be here.
Oh, I'm so glad to have you, because you and I, we definitely are contemporaries. I'm sure we've never met each other. We only know each other through social media and DMs and things like that. But we both are baseball purists, I can tell. But before we get into the topic that we were going to discuss, give us a little history of why not Gaetti. Now, I know Gary Gaetti was a very good ball player. Not a superstar, but a very solid ball player in the 80s, mostly for the Twins, bounced around a little bit at the end of his career. You look at his career numbers, and they were I actually was very impressed when I looked at his career numbers, because I didn't realize he had as high as he did. But he was one of those guys that, kind of like me being a Met fan in the 70s, like a Lenny Randle kind of guy. I was just thinking of, but then I saw Gaetti's numbers, and I was like, it's a lot better than I thought. Why not Gaetti? How did he end up in your world?
So when I first started posting on Twitter, the thrust of my account has always been sort of celebrating these great players of the past, celebrating the tremendous history of the game of baseball. And, I have a particular focus on guys that perhaps are underrated, guys who fall into that non-superstar category. And to me, nobody epitomizes that kind of player like Gary Gaetti, because, he's a consensus, not a Hall of Famer, right? No, there's no Gaetti for Hall of Fame campaign going on out there. He's not a superstar by any stretch, but he did a lot of things really well. Tremendous defensive third baseman. He won Gold Glove. Tremendous.
4 Gold Gloves.
360 home runs. He won a world championship with Minnesota. After he left the Twins, he became somewhat of a journeyman, wound up hitting 35 homers for the Royals in 95, had big playoff success with the Cardinals in 96, had a strong season at 39 years old with the Cubs. After he retired from playing the big leagues, went on to be a hitting coach and a manager in independent ball. He's done some of everything, did it all really, really well. He was as fierce of a competitor as anybody, and I could not think of a player who epitomizes old school, hard-nosed baseball better than Gary Gaetti. And so he's sort of the the inspiration for my account and the direction that I've taken it in.
Yeah, I mean, I've enjoyed your account for quite some time now. How long have you had it running?
I think I started in 2016, but didn't get sort of serious about posting regularly until during the pandemic.
Okay, so a couple of years, like 3 years or so now. We're moving on from the pandemic. I definitely completely agree with you, the underrated kind of guy. I know John Olerud is one of the other guys that you post a lot about. And me being a Mets guy, I'm a big John Olerud fan. I have always enjoyed watching him play, even, back before he was on the Mets with Toronto. And then after that with Seattle. The guy and even a short stint with the Yanks. But the guys like that are, I think that many people overlook these guys, but without those guys, you don't get the rings and stuff like that. You don't get the divisional championship. You don't get the pennants. You stay out of the second division, to use an old term. Without guys like that, you're going to find yourself in that bottom dweller thing. So that's quite interesting how you just came up with Gaetti as the guy that epitomizes all of that. But what we wanted to talk about tonight, because we only have a half-hour program, is kind of like the baseball purists versus what I've learned from you, and I've adopted from you, if you don't mind. I've been using it as a phrase, the war mongers. Generation Z, these youngsters, the analytics crew, he gets on base kind of guy. Why does Pete need to be here? It kind of brings me back to Moneyball every time I read some of these discussions that you're having with some of these folks, which I'm assuming, and most of the time when I do get into it with you, I usually guess correctly that they're in the under 30 crowd. Why do you think that this war has taken over baseball, analytics, and all of this other stuff, but especially war?
Well, it's such a loaded question, and there are so many sort of moving parts and different considerations at play here. And in the interest of full disclosure, I'm probably closer in age to a lot of those analytics guys. I mean, I'm in my mid-30s, and the truth is, I'm not at all anti-information. I'm not anti-data. I'm not inherently anti-analytics. The thing that I have sort of taken issue with is that this pursuit of sort of optimizing the game takes away from so many of the great things that made us baseball fans in the first place. Mm-hmm. The drama, the no-hitters, right? Even complete games are a dying breed.
Yep.
The analytics push to optimize and make the game efficient and all of that has resulted in, on the pitching side, guys are no longer allowed to finish what they started. They're not allowed to face the top of the order for a third time through. We have seen starting pitchers pulled from games with no hitters in progress, with perfect games in progress. That would have been unthinkable a generation ago.
Oh my God, forget about it.
Well, slugging against the third time through is so much higher. Batting average against the third time through is so much higher. And it's true. It's not that the analytics are wrong. It's not that the data is wrong. It's just that the heavy reliance on it for game management decisions takes away from the possibility of greatness, the possibility of somebody throwing a perfect game. The things that keep the fans on the edge of their seats wanting to see, will he do it? Right? It's pre-scripted now. You know when the starter's going to get lifted because the spreadsheet says that it's time for him to be done. He's at 90 pitches or whatever. We've got everybody on pitch count. Nobody's allowed to face hitters a third time and so on. Now, on the hitting side, the same push for optimization and gamification and efficiency is there. And guys have realized that Kyle Schwarber now is an effective leadoff hitter. He's a slow guy with a 197 batting average who strikes out 215 times a year. The idea of putting him in the same batting order position as Ricky Henderson and Lou Brock, Kenny Lofton, again, a generation ago, unthinkable. But now, well, he gets on base. He walks a lot. He hits 40 home runs a year. His slugging percentage when leading off the game is astronomical, and he's a guy who has a legitimate possibility.
Isn't it amazing now how
you know, putting the other team in a 1-0 hole before the game's hardly started. And so it's just a much different approach than we've ever seen in the past.
Listen, I'm 56. I'm old school to a fault, admittedly, as far as sports are concerned, especially the game of baseball, which is the one I enjoy the most out of all the sports. To me, a leadoff hitter is a guy like Ricky Henderson, a guy like Davey Lopes, a guy like Willie Wilson. These type of guys is kind of the guy that could take some pitches, draw walks, get on base, be quick. And then the number 2 hitter, to me, is always that patient guy where his job is to move that runner along, albeit hitting a ground ball deeper, maybe into the hole on the right side, get him over to second base, do a hit and run kind of thing, maybe start the runner a little bit. And then, of course, you have your 3, 4, 5 is your producing guys. 3, not with the power, more with the gap. And then 4 and 5, usually the ones that put it over the wall. To have a guy like Kyle Schwarber leading off a game, it almost like, it feels like I'm not watching the same game that I watched, I don't know, you said a generation ago, possibly even less than that. It's like how these things have taken over, and you got these guys arguing with you about certain players are better, and you're great at making these comparisons, bringing Baseball Reference into play, which is obviously everybody goes to. That's kind of like the Bible online for baseball people, for stats and things like that. Give me an example of a player comparison that and you're excellent with your sarcasm too, by the way. I got to give you a tip of the cap for that one. Give me a comparison of a player that somebody's trying to say in the old days, and these are guys even before my time. I mean, I'm talking, to me, we can get into that. Hopefully we have time on the greatest player of all time, Babe Ruth, greatest athlete of all time, Babe Ruth, who's not even athletic, because you don't have to be athletic to be the greatest athlete. Give me a comparison of some of these guys that people are trying to say are so much better now than somebody from yesterday.
Okay, there's a lot of great ones, and I have to give a shout out to one of my other favorite Twitter accounts, which is @thewarmonger. It takes the name from, what I had been, a phrase that I had been using. But he posts some really tremendous comparisons for, folks in the New York area. One that I would find interesting is that Brett Gardner actually produced more wins above replacement than Don Mattingly. And if you look at Gardner and Mattingly side by side, and you think about sort of their roles in the lineup, you have one guy who's an all-time great hitter and a team captain and an MVP. And yeah, he played during a rough era where he didn't have a chance to hoist the hardware at the end of the season.
Yeah.
People who watch Mattingly play, they know his game on both sides of the ball is exceptionally strong.
Mm-hmm.
And Brett Gardner, listen, I love me some Gardy, but the only counting stat that he has the edge on Mattingly is stolen bases. Counting stats, rake stats, everything else is far behind. He was more of just like a solid dude, and by the end he was more of just a role player.
Yeah.
Good defensive outfielder, had a lot of speed, but it's one of those things where pointing out that the people would ask you to believe that Brett Gardner produced more value than Don Mattingly did, and it's just not something that makes sense to wrap your head around.
It's incomprehensible. And I'm a Gardner guy. I actually like Brett Gardner a lot. I think he was a very valuable player for a number of years on that team. His versatility was all there. I thought he was a very good slap hitter. He could put the ball, in the gaps. He can put the ball in the seats sometimes too. He had a little more power than you would think by looking at him. But Mattingly like you said, it was a difficult. We're talking like the Snot Merrill, and then he was lucky at the end of his career to have a little bit A little success under Buck, and then they made the playoffs in his final year. But he did play in a little bit of a downtime for the Yanks, and that was during the whole Steinbrenner suspension time and all of that. Just bad luck on Don Mattingly's thing. I still am one of those guys. If I was in the baseball writers, the Writers Association, they would hate me because I am a snob with the Hall of Fame. I don't think Mattingly's a Hall of Famer. I don't think Gary Carter's a Hall of Famer, and he was one of my favorite players as a fan and as a journalist. I am very, very tough for me to look at a guy and say he's a Hall of Famer. He needs to not only be dominant on his team, but dominant in his era to be a Hall of Famer. He can't be one of these guys that was, he was a nice player. But yeah, his numbers at the end of 23 years add up. So he should make it because he hit that 1,500 RBI or whatever. I'm tough with that. I don't think Mattingly deserves it. But if you're going to compare Don Mattingly and Brett Gardner, the conversation ends before there even needs to be an explanation. So that's where I look at these war things. And I have a 22-year-old son that he's into like some of these new stats, but he also gets what the old guy says a lot, and he listens to the old guy. And I try to explain to him why Starling Marte did not fare well as a second-place hitter. But he's like, it's not like that anymore. And you know what? My son's right, because I'm like, Marte's a leadoff hitter. He doesn't feel comfortable batting second. You got Nimmo and Marte before the injuries. They were basically the same type of player. The Mets didn't need both of them. But the game has changed so much that second place hitter isn't what it used to be. What do you think is where did this all start? Did it all start from Moneyball? Did it start from Tony La Russa specializing lefty-righty matchups when he was managing the Sox and the A's? What do you think?
So it's easy to pin it on Moneyball because they made a movie literally about sort of the beginning of this phenomenon. So people will point to that. Obviously, since then, teams have built out their data departments. They've built out a lot of proprietary metrics. They've built out a lot of ways to cultivate and analyze data and use it in decision-making. And the shift that has taken place is, like you mentioned before, a two-hole hitter classically is a bat-to-ball guy who can use the whole field, who can hit it through, the gap between first and second, who can hit and run, who can lay down a bunt, who can do anything you ask him to do.
Yeah.
And aesthetically, and in terms of baseball as entertainment, I love that. But the direction we've gone in now is like, hey, the most important thing a two-hole hitter can do right now is avoid outs. You only get 27 outs per game, right? Mm-hmm. So avoiding outs is bigger than any sort of aesthetic or entertainment value that you can give to the fans. It's about efficiency over aesthetics. And so if you have a guy who draws a ton of walks, they don't even really care if you are, have speed or have basketball skills, hence Schwarber hitting leadoff, right? He avoids outs despite his 197 batting average. And so in the pursuit of efficiency, look, I can't tell you that it doesn't work because did he hit 197? Yes, but he also scored over 100 runs and drove in over 100 runs. That's a pretty good year by any measure, right?
Yeah.
And it's just the people who lose are the fans who are watching this game, where he's probably going to either strike out, hit a home run, or draw a walk. And that's going to happen game after game after game. Not the same sort of excitement factor as a Ricky Henderson, who's going to hit a single, steal second, steal third, and give you a lot to watch.
Yeah.
It's just a different brand of a baseball, and this angle toward efficiency and optimization just makes it so clinical and so much less the kind of game that we, that made us become fans in the first place. So I'm not here to tell you that analytics doesn't work or there's no basis to some of the data, some of the findings, but it's changed the game in a way that sacrifices baseball as an entertainment product.
Yeah, I definitely think that. I was always a National League guy. I didn't like the DH. I did not like interleague play at all. Still don't. Didn't and don't. Still present tense, past tense, and future. Give me a 2-to-1 pitchers duel any day, 2 hours and 20 minutes, versus some kind of looks like almost a football score. In the AL, but now it doesn't even matter because of interleague. Every day, that whole difference, National League strike zone, American League strike zone, all of that's gone by way of the dodo bird. I got to jump around a little bit because I wish we had more time to. This is definitely something that I want to pick up at another day. We can do this again if you're willing. To expand more on what you were just saying. But I want to jump into the Ohtani topic a little bit because, all the great news and the huge contract he signed with LA. I personally think it's insane. I don't care about the money. It doesn't matter about that. That's not coming out of my bank account. But to me, this guy, if he could be excelling on, as a two-way player, then I don't have a problem with him making big money and all of that. He's a DH. He's not going to pitch, and his arm is probably going to be fried. I'm giving a prediction of 3 years after this year, because this year doesn't count. He's not pitching this year. I give him 3 years in and out of pitching, and then he's going to give it up, and he'll be a full-time one-way player. What do you feel about Shohei Ohtani and all of the hubbub about him and moving forward with him?
The Dodgers have probably almost already recouped their investment selling Ohtani jerseys. I mean, the guy is a phenomenon. Just what an incredible talent. He's not just a guy that does both. He's a premier power hitter and a premier pitcher. He's incredible. Having said that, $70 million a year is an absolutely just eye-popping number for a guy who we know is not going to pitch in 24. And the question mark is what happens in 25, right? He'll be back from his second elbow surgery.
Mm-hmm.
Do they make him a starter again? People have talked about they should experiment with him being a closer so he can throw one inning at a time. Imagine that guy runs in and just throws gas for an inning, hits 40 homers, saves 40 games. I don't know. Maybe that's too far-fetched. I do think that if it looks like he's not going to return to pitching, I don't think he will just DH. I think they will either turn him into a corner outfielder or a first baseman because he's a great athlete. I don't think there's any reason he couldn't be a great defensive position player if that became his thing. So it'll be really interesting to see how this contract plays out. Obviously, 10 years, it's a long time, but you saw that he deferred the vast majority of the salary, which is is a very unique deal. But the thing I like the most about that is it shows how hungry to win he is. He's part of this superstar-laden lineup, and he wants the team to be able to go build a great squad around him, which is something that the Angels were never really able to do. Even with Trout and Ohtani, two of the great players in the game, they couldn't even be a 500 team because they didn't have the resources to build out the rest of the squad.
Yeah, no, I can totally see that. I mean, to me, the comparisons between Ohtani and Babe Ruth, listen, I'm not saying Ohtani can't be the greatest player of all time. We don't know. It's the unknown. I'm going to bet the house against it, but I don't see him even in the realm of Babe Ruth. How do you feel about the Ruth comparisons? And of course, it's because he was a two-way player as well. The Ruth could have been one of the greatest pitchers of all time, maybe sans Johnson and Mathewson, if he didn't hit so well, which is the reason why he was converted into an outfielder, everyday player. What do you feel about the comparisons with Ruth and Shohei Ohtani?
I think it's an obvious comparison to make because Ruth is somebody that had tremendous prowess doing both. Truth is that if you look back at Ruth's stats he didn't actually do both at the same time very long.
No.
He went from being, mostly a pitcher to being almost exclusively a hitter with very little overlap. Whereas Ohtani's, first few seasons here, he's stuck with both, albeit on a sort of mitigated schedule. I think he's had to have a 6-day rotation instead of 5. He
Yeah.
usually doesn't give you quite as many innings as a full-time pitcher. But the comparison is there because he's a guy who has ace stuff and can also hit the ball 500 feet. I don't think there will ever truly be another player like Bruce who outperforms his peers and contemporaries to such a preposterous extent. But you can certainly see why people draw the comparison in the first place.
Yeah, definitely. Unfortunately, we're going to have to leave it there. Plug your apparel site, the things that you sell, the Not Gaetti stuff.
Oh, yeah, sure. So, feel free to give me a follow at Not Gaetti. There's a link to my Redbubble store in my Twitter bio. And basically, there's all kinds of stuff with these hilarious logos and designs that sort of are in the spirit of everything we've talked about here.
Yeah, definitely. It's a great line of stuff, all different things, shirts, cups, hats, you name it, he's got it there. Thank you, Not Gaetti, for joining us today on WGBB Radio. Guys, next Monday is Christmas, so you're going to be hearing a replay of this. You're going to hear us talk about Babe Ruth and Ohtani again. Have a great 2 weeks. Merry Christmas, everyone. We'll see you in 2 weeks, next live show.
Noah, I have a job for you.
Jeez, it's not another arc, is it?
No, not again. This time I need a full-scale home renovation.
Noah Construction and Builders is your design and build partner. We do it all, from additions and dormers to full-scale renovations. Schedule your no-cost design consultation today. Visit us online at noahconstruction-builders.com.
Noah Construction and Builders. Through dreams we design, with vision we build.